Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Yes, I'm saying all three because people are joining at different times and from different places. So it is your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am really glad to be with you again for another episode of the BGC Book Club. This is a conversation that I've been waiting to have for a while, so I can't wait to get into it here in the next couple of moments. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Cleveland, Ohio, and a bunch of other places in between. So if you are new here, it's your first time. If you've been here many times, if you don't mind dropping in the comments where you're joining us from, it's always a pleasure to see who all is in the room, and you never know where folks may show up from. So if you're new to BGC Book Club, we are actually coming up on 5 years since the BGC Book Club actually began during the pandemic. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to talk to many, many beautiful Black women writers who are writing stories that are by, for, and about us. And as we continue on in this vein, I can't wait to see and wait for you to see some of what's in store. So tonight's guests, I have been here before. They are a dynamic writing duo, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them to you because I know you're going to be in for a treat. Now, they are known as the twins because they're both named Suzette. So I'm going to start and introduce each one of them individually. We have Suzette D. Harrison, who is a native Californian and the middle of 3 daughters who grew up in a home where reading was required and not requested. Her literary career began in junior high with the publishing of her poetry. While she pays homage to Alex Haley, Gloria Naylor, Alice Walker, Langston Hughes, and Toni Morrison as legends who inspired her creativity, Dr. Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings unleashed her writing. She prefers happy endings, but loves creating flawed characters and storylines with intricate layers and depth, offering readers unexpected plot twists, and we will find that in the book that we're going to be talking about tonight, which is Watercolor Whispers. So without any further delay, let's welcome back, and I was teasing her before we came on. She's probably been here more than anybody because she just writes such great works, and that is Suzette D. Harrison. So welcome.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
It's always.
You're welcome. So let's bring your twin on in the room. And you may hear me call her Salt, and she'll tell you why in a little bit. But I'm going to bring her twin into the room, and that's who's Suzette Riddick, who is a wife, mother, and nurse practitioner who enjoys writing about imperfect people finding perfect love. She's an Amazon best-selling author and was a featured author in USA Today for Happy Ever After. She's a native of Philadelphia, PA. She loves to travel, read, and is addicted to Chanel perfume. And without further delay, let's welcome the other twin to the room, Suzette Riddick, also known as Peppa.
Hey, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again, Marcy. Glad to be here.
Yes.
With my twin.
Yes, with your twin. So, of course, 2 Suzettes. How often does that happen?
Right.
Let me just back up for just a second because I want to make it clear we're talking about 2 books tonight, and this is their second time coming here to talk about their Generations novella series. And as I mentioned, Suzette Harrison's book is Watercolor Whispers, and Suzette Riddick's book is Graceful Watercolors. So we're going to get into that here just momentarily. So again, welcome, ladies, and I'm excited to be here for the second installment of this 10-book series.
Yeah.
So let's get started. So first of all, how did the 2 Suzettes meet? Because that's not a common name. So the fact that there are 2 Black women writing named Suzette is pretty outstanding.
Pretty deep, pretty dope, pretty divine. Yes, it is. Twin. Well, this is my twin. So you'll hear me all night call her twin and vice versa. That's who we are to each other, God-given sisters of the heart, knit together by the heart and by the spirit. So twin reached out to me after I wrote my first historical novel, Taffy, and I love the fact that she was bold and daring because I've done that before, and it's kind of intimidating because you don't know how the other person will respond, or wonder if you have ulterior motives. You're trying to get in on my star and get on my shine, and you want to ride my coattail. All kind of things can go through the mind, but I was so glad that she did. She just reached out, to letting me know her response to the book, and that was her story. And that was 2017. We've been riding hard ever since.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And what was it that led you to want to reach out Pepper?
The story was just so good. And I love J. California Cooper, and Twins writing reminds me of J. California Cooper's writing. And I was on vacation, actually in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
And I was up, literally reading all night. And I just was like, by nature, I am an introvert. But when it comes to things like books and writing, I think that's when I become an extrovert. And I just was like, I have to reach out to her. And, I would see Twin, on Facebook, like promoting her book and everything like that. So I kind of felt comfortable, reaching out to her to let her know that I just really enjoyed the book. And I just believe in giving people their flowers now, you know what I'm saying? And it didn't cost me anything. And she was so receptive, and, we've been the twindom ever since.
I love that. I love that so much.
Excuse me, I said 17 was 2016.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're rolling up on 10 years then.
Yeah.
Rolling up on 10 years. But what I love, why I wanted you all to share a little bit about that, because there's a lot in what you just said. There's a thing of just being able to connect with another sister who's on a similar journey. And sometimes it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, and you might be a little, feel a little strange about reaching out to somebody, or like you said, salt. And the reason why I call them salt and pepper is because of the hair colors, okay? Just so you all know. Even though Suzette D, she's pink salt now, because she's got pink hair. I love it. But I think that that's something, because even in the work that I do, there are people that reach out to me, or, it might be a publisher or whatever the case may be, but it's something about putting yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And then also being able to come together and work together, because you all are dealing with a lot of the same things, whether you're writing individually or coming together to do something collectively. So I just think that there's a lot of power in your relationship. And I definitely wanted you all to share something about that, as we dive into it.
Thank you. It's definitely powerful. And, we do draw power from each other. Mm-hmm. And, and it's so nice, like you said, knowing someone that knows what you're doing and what you're talking about. You don't have to explain it. Although our journeys are different and we're individual people, we still understand each other's passions, struggles, etc. And it's very fortifying and uplifting to know my twin is a text, a call away.
Right. I love that. So let's start talking a little bit about the series, Generations Novella series. Now, first of all, I have to say, I read 4 books in the 10-book series thus far, and they are just good. But I love the way that you have written these interconnected, interwoven stories, even though you're coming at them from 2 different types of writing, so to speak, as well as 2 different timelines. So what was it that initially drew you all to want to start to do this? Because, to be 2 people in the same field is one thing, but decide to do something together. What was it that led you to want to start the Generation series?
Yeah.
Well, we had been talking for years, right, Twin, about doing something together. And, it just was, ideas and concepts. I just had to throw that in there.
Right.
For years, for like a few years, and we, just would say, well, we want to do something. And, initially we were going to write contemporary romance. Mm-hmm. But, Twin is, excellent at writing historical fiction, and I'm more comfortable in, writing more contemporary work. Mm-hmm. So, I guess about a couple years ago, right, Twin, we just decided, what, we're going to stop talking about it. I don't know, I guess just the timing was right. And we just was like, what, it's enough about saying we're going to do this. And we just really, started mapping things out. And that's pretty much, how we started writing. You want to add anything else, Twin?
What I want to say is, and Twin, to her credit, to my twin's credit, she as she said, writes contemporary romance, but for the generation, she had to take a huge leap. I was, able and blessed to stay in my zone, so to speak,
Right.
continuing the African American historical fiction. Twin had to jump out of contemporary romance into women's literature, whole different genre, whole different style of writing, in creating our generation series. So, I'm always going to make sure that she knows how proud I am of her, that she didn't just do a collaboration with me in a series, but she stepped outside of her own genre in which she is most comfortable.
I love that. And there is romance in both books, but they're just not romance books.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We couldn't get away from that.
Yeah, because I mean, we love a good love story.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that in all of the books, there's that element, but there's so much more. There are deeper issues, and as in Salt's book, we got all the historical things that would have had to been researched and figured out, and all of that. And then in your book, Peppa, it's the contemporary issues that we're dealing with. So I mean, the books are very rich. So I can appreciate that. So for those who don't know, and either one of you can answer, what is the difference between like a novella and say a full-fledged novel, for those who might not know?
Absolutely. It's the length of the book. So with your typical standard trademark novel, you're looking at 60,000 plus words, 60,000 and up. It could be 80, 90 plus words for a full length novel, whereas a novella is a short story. So it's compact. You're looking at perhaps 30 to 50 to 60, that, no more usually than 50, 55,000 words. So it's a shorter story, a faster journey.
But the fact that you're doing this as a series, you're writing more than what would be. Ultimately, it's even bigger. If you were to take everything at the end and put it into a book, it would be a pretty thick book if you took all of the stories and put them together. So, Pepper, from the standpoint of kind of deciding how the stories were going to be laid out, what was that process like for you all?
Well, Twin and I, we meet twice a month, the second and the fourth Sunday. And basically what, we did was we flushed ideas out with each book. We're going, story by story. We're taking the families of the folks from generations. So we started by meeting and, throwing out story ideas, plot ideas. And also we have a spreadsheet that we keep it's kind of like what you would call what are those things called, Twin?
Character Bible?
Story Bibles. Yeah. We do a character profiles. We have a story Bible where we have things that are laid out in the town, what the churches are, the schools, the auto repair places, the gas stations, the restaurants. So it's really very intricate world building, and we have it all. We have a database where we keep it that we're able to refer to and to actually read each other's work, just to make sure that everything is cohesive. Because in about, let's say, trying to say, Twin, an heirloom. If she talks about an heirloom that may be in one of her books, I have to make sure that if the heirloom is a crystal vase, that it's blue. It's not blue in her book, but pink in mine. So it's really a lot of communicating and texting back and forth, and again the meetings, and keeping notes and keeping that Bible, that story Bible, up to date.
I
and
love
adding as we go,
Yes,
and just building on the foundation.
Yes, I was really thinking about as reading it, because I said I read the 4 books that are currently out, and it is, there is seamless, and it's like even though I know it's different stories and different times and different writers, I give you kudos because the way that you all work together and write together, it definitely, if I didn't know it was 2 different people, I would think it was one, just cohesive thing with 2 different timelines. So that really is a testament to the work that you all are doing together. So let's start talking a little bit about what these particular 2 books are about. Now, the whole series is centered around a particular community. So I guess we can start with the community first, and then we can get into a little bit of what the books 3 and 4 are about. So I'll let you go, Salt, and tell us a little bit about the space where these people are and where the story is taking place.
Absolutely. So the foundation of our the genesis or foundation of our community is a town called Colemanville, and it's named for a freed slave or a young man who through the Emancipation let me stop. It's not through the Emancipation Proclamation that he gets his freedom. His mother earns his freedom for him. His mother, and this is not a spoiler because it's not an actual story. It's just part of the bedrock of the of generations. His mother gains his freedom for him. As a little boy, she loses her life in the process, but he takes on the last name of Coleman. So Colemanville becomes the town in which generations takes place. It's a small, fictitious, of course, all Black town. We said it in North Carolina. It's a southern town, small town, rural life, rural living, close knit community. Everybody knows everybody. Too much, too much.
Right.
Everybody knows everybody's business. And so, like you said, it's a lot of world building, and that was really fun. You get to choose who comes to your town and how your town looks, and we get to be architects, so to speak, and engineers, and so we built the town of Colemanville, and that's where Generations takes place. The logo for Generations, or slogan, pardon me, is for life, love, and liberty.
Yeah.
And that's what our characters find in Colemanville: is life, is love, is liberty. And it's not just liberty, an adjective or descriptive, but it's liberty is the name of the woman who gave her life so that she could rescue these 5 little Black boys, colored boys, back then, colored Negro boys, to rescue them from slavery when she couldn't get free from being enslaved. But she could rescue those 5 boys, and they come back and pay homage to her by building this town.
Yes. And I really love that aspect of the story because from the historical point of view, it introduces us to the fact that there were these all Black towns where, people, we may have heard of different communities and things, but just the fact that there are these Black towns that these people came together and they built everything that they needed was contained within this community. And like you say, everybody's in everybody's business and all that sort of thing. But I mean, there was just power in the fact of people being able to do that, to carve out their own world and their own niche. And, yes, they may have had to go other places for other things, which we see that in the story, but by and large, they were self-contained.
Yes. Self-supportive and self-efficient. Absolutely.
Right. And hey, what way the world is going now, we need to figure that out again.
Yes.
Hello. I'm opposed.
Yes, we need to figure that out again. So, and of course, Pepper, when you take over in the story, you're talking about more of what's happening in current day. So we do get to see how the town changes and stuff like that over time, which is, I'm thinking of my mother's small town in southeast Georgia. I know in my lifetime I've seen things change over time. So we do get to see, how what happens, and then whether young people decide to stay, if they decide to leave, if they go, if they come back, we get to witness all of those things, which are really real when you're talking about many of these communities.
Yes. Yep. And that was really fun to write too, at a time when twin story is going on, like the town is, thriving, it's alive. And then, as time goes on, like in the 80s and the 90s, like how the future generations, they move away. But, now, like with my character Ella, she just wants a simpler life. Like she wants to go back. Like she left and went and lived in the big world and, traveled, and just to be able to come back home again. So I really love that, about our little town of Colemanville, like how it's really, you'll see in stories, even with Jillian, like it really becomes home again and begins to thrive again of what it once was back in the heyday. So that's pretty cool to be able to see a town, thrive and come alive again.
Absolutely. I love that. So in Watercolor Whispers, which is book 3 of the Generations series, give us a little bit of a synopsis of what's going on in that particular story.
So Watercolor Whispers, just to give a little bit more grounding, the historical book is 1949. So just to give everyone a picture, excuse me, of what time frame we're dealing with. So it's 1949, and my character, Alona Robertson, Brinks, she's a young woman, 27, I believe, 27. She's married, not to a very nice person. I told Twin, I think this is the most hated villain that I've ever written. I just could not stand her husband for anything. But she's an artist, pardon me. And one of the reasons why we get the title of the book is because she's somewhat suppressed. She's quiet by nature. And that's not a bad thing. She's a very different heroine for me. I've never written a heroine like her where she's a little bit more subtle and subdued a little bit. Someone might describe her that way. And she's soft-spoken. So we have Watercolor Whispers. She's an artist. And so she's basically reclaiming her voice, her power, her stance, her position, and discovering, things about herself and being able to admit what she wants, what she needs, what she desires, and standing up for herself in that regard to go after and pursue some of these things. So I think she's a different character. I will say that. Like I said, she's a different kind of character for me. Mm-hmm. But I think that I loved her. I grew to love her and grew to love. All power doesn't have to be hard.
It doesn't.
Power, sometimes you can walk softly and still carry a big stick. I've heard my mother say things like that. So it's not about the brazenness and always, we like to depict Black women as always in each other's faces or somebody's faces and, tearing it down. And, but it's like she has a different state of being. And I'm okay with that. And it was good for me to explore that, again, that power is not always loud. And so it's really, for me, it was a good thing as a good, not demonstration, but it was a good opportunity for me to learn a different side of Black feminine power.
Yes, and she definitely had her power in this book, just as an artist, just as someone who, like a lot of women, because you said it's 1949, and there are things that oftentimes choices and things like that women had to make, that they were led to do certain things, because at that point in time it's like you get married and you have babies and that's pretty much it, and you are the word that some people like, you are what's the word, submissive wife,
right
and all of these sorts of things, that it was just a totally different time. So be able to watch this character who gets into a situation, a relationship that she has to make some decisions about, and just watch her navigate that, and then, as you said, quietly find a way to take back her power. That just meant so much. And just some of the things that she encountered and how she had to learn to love herself and think about herself and what was going to work for her versus what wasn't. So I really loved Ilana in that particular book, and just all the different things that we see her go through. So yes,
thank you.
You're welcome. So in Graceful Watercolors, this is contemporary. So what are we seeing in this particular book?
In Graceful Watercolors, you'll meet Ella Caswell. She is a photographer and artist. She wanted to get away, as a teenager from little Colemanville. She wanted to, get away, go to college. She becomes an NBA photographer, which, takes her all over the United States and internationally. Um, she also wants to be an artist like her great grandmother Ilona, and she actually, is talented. She has the gene, she has the Ilona gene, but she does have some, doubts if she, will be as, recognized, renowned as her, great grandmother. Um, Life, she gets into a situation where she's, traumatized. I don't want to give too much of the story
Right.
away.
We don't give you spoilers.
But we're not going to get spoilers. But, through her journey, she learns to, triumph, to turn that tragedy, into triumph. And she actually, a big part of her healing is coming back, to Colemanville, coming back to her roots where, she's, secure and can, find her footing again, because, something, does happen that kind of like, rocks her world. And she just, she needs to go back to that foundation. And, I just think in life, sometimes it's really, important for us to kind of have that bedrock, that foundation to be able, to go back to be able to weather the storm. So that's what readers will see in Ella's story.
Yes. And what I love in both stories, and actually throughout the series, because of course, this is the same community as you all have stated, but it's like we get to see different characters, and each character gets, different characters are getting highlighted in different books. But one of the things that I love, number one, they are powerful Black women who are showing up in their power in different ways, but they do go through things. And in the going through things, they also have strong community around them. And I think that's the biggest, that's one of the biggest takeaways. Yes, it's the generations of family, and like you say, a great great grandmother and her, great granddaughter are like the features in these two books, but there's such a rich community that surrounds both of the women.
Which is so important. We all, need community to thrive and not just survive. And that's who we were. And hopefully that's who we still are. We're creating community here, even, through a literary community and the support of, and, supporters like yourself. We can't do this work without you, so this is a representation of community, but that being able to live next door, let me go get a stick of butter from Miss So-and-so next door, those are the, the stories that we hear, growing up. And I think that we have suffered, and I'll say this, and it's probably stupid, some people might find issue with it, but some parts of integration hurt us because of learning to move away from each other, moved away from each other spatially. And we didn't have that tight-knit community. And that's one of the things I love about Generations and Colemanville, being able to go back to a time where we did have Miss So-and-so next door. My mother tells stories how when, if they were cutting up as little children on the way home from school, you got your behind tapped right there by Miss So-and-so on the corner. But by the time you got home, your mama already knew you'd been cutting up. Miss So-and-so had already called your mama, So community, I think, is something that we miss in some ways.
We definitely do.
And also reconciliation.
Yes.
Like you see that, in the story as well. Yeah.
Yes, reconciliation, because a lot of times, even within the midst of a community or a family or the different generations, everybody's coming to things with a different perspective.
Yes.
Even being in the same town and maybe having a lot of the similar experiences, we still have different perspectives. And so, yes, being able to see the reconciliation. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily look the way you thought it was going to look.
Right.
You know, when it does happen. And, you know, also, of course, the book is called Generations, and it's not just generations of family, it's also generations of community. Because, you know, like you were saying, you know, the older lady who lived next door, she becomes like your auntie to the point you're calling her auntie or Mama Joe or whatever the case may be, because there is this community and the ability to have conversations, because that's something that I've had talked to different people about before, that it's important for us to have intergenerational relationships as well.
Agreed. And you were you see some of that, even talking about the differences. Even in a household, you can still have different perspectives. We see that with Alona's family. She has a completely different perspective or desire than what her mother, had. Her mother is much older than she is. Her mother had her late in life, but you see the clash of generations right there. That her mother, it's about being a housewife and, raising your children and being there for your husband. And Alona is wanting something different. So even within the same households, we can find the clash of generations and community within community.
You know what? It's so strange. Twin and I, we call it the twin brain. And I tell you, when we're writing these stories, like she just mentioned the clash between Ilona and her mother, and Ella and her mother, they clash. And it's so, we honestly, honest to goodness, we did not even discuss that would happen between that mother and daughter dynamic until like we had, our regular meeting, and we just were, like talking about, the story and what was happening and what was going on. And it's just so weird, that twin brain that we have, that kind of just like, incidentally happened. It honestly was not a planned thing to have, that mother-daughter dynamic in both of the stories.
But it's real though, because, in our own families, that oftentimes that's the thing, because, one group of women is brought up, a certain way. And so they have a certain mindset. Then maybe another, group of women is brought up differently, or maybe you brought up the same, but I'm going to be the person that does what I want to do and not do what everybody else is doing. So yeah, that's definitely a thing to think of, those conflicts that can occur. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, yes, there are also men in the stories, and not just romantically, but just in general, the men that are part of the community. And I love the way in these books, as you did in the first two as well, that the men show up and they're a part of the community and they're supportive. So how important was it for you all to make sure that that was something that stood out in this series?
I think for me, it's always important I come from my perspective is I will not vilify Black men. We have villains in all races, but I'm not going to be on that wagon of all Black men are dogs. Sorry, I'm not getting on that train. You can burn my ticket because I have a good husband. But I always want to shine light on good Black men. And I try to draw from the good Black men in my life when I create my heroes. I want them to be their own men and their own person, but they are inspired by, or empowered by those Black men that I do know that I love, appreciate, and adore. And so, want to show them in their complexities as well. Not perfect. We all have flaws. None of us is perfect. So I want to be able to show complexity. And I think with Gabriel, who is the hero in Watercolor Whispers, we get to see his flaws in a whole different way. And I'm not going to say anything because again,
because we can't tell.
We can't tell it here. Miss Marcy told us we can't tell it. No spoilers. But we get to see a different kind of hero with a huge flaw that is undeniable. You cannot not see the flaw. But it was a flaw, that he paid a price for. Hey, I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to leave it right there. But I love drawing strong Black men, powerful, loving Black men, protective Black men. And so those are the kind of heroes I personally like to draw.
Yes, and Gabriel definitely was that. Well, like I said, y'all got to read it, so I'm not going to say too much. But yeah, I loved that trajectory, that story, everything that had to go through. And there was an anti-hero in there as well. I wanted to kill him. All of those things. So yes. Oh, that's just giving you some hearts. Yes, yes. Because it is important to have a balanced view, because oftentimes, our literature, meaning Black women writing, has been people have said, oh, it's too much of man bashing, but no, that is not this. But the reality of it is, just like you said, there are good people and bad people, and there are people who do things that they shouldn't do. There are people who will mistreat you and all of that. And then even in the case of that anti-hero in Watercolor Whispers, some of it was just him being a bad person. Some of it was the times that they were in and how men were expected to behave, in terms of what a wife is supposed to do and what a wife isn't supposed to do and all those sorts of things. So not that I had sympathy for him, because I did not.
Please don't have no sympathy for him, please. No.
I had no sympathy for him, but then I also somewhat understood the time. So that's part of it. But going over to Graceful Watercolors, of course, you have men in here as well. Some that aren't good and some that are. Well, I should say one in particular. Same thing, anti-hero, hero. In Graceful Watercolors, you tap into some of the things that we're dealing with in real time, because it is contemporary. And I don't think this will be giving anything away, but just the fact that, sometimes women are in certain industries and the men in those industries don't always treat the women well. We'll just leave it at that. But was it, obviously you wanted to do that, but just the way that you told that story, tapping into things that really feel like news, was it a challenge to do that or not?
It really was a challenge, because I wanted, because it is what's going on. The challenge was being able to write it so that I don't offend anyone, or it isn't triggering, So that for me was the real challenge. With not wanting, to trigger. I wanted to tell Ella's experience and why she made the choices, that she made. And I also needed or wanted to balance, like Hassan coming into her life, to show that, all Black men are not the enemy, and that she didn't have to be afraid to put her heart on the line. But yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about it without talking about
it. We're not going to.
But yes, it was challenging, because I really, I wanted to tell her story, but I also wanted to, and I guess it is like the healthcare provider in me, right? Because it's like when you expose someone to something, you want to make sure you're there, like to make sure that the person is okay. So in the story, I wanted to, because I know for somebody that could be their story and it could be triggering. Right. And I wanted to be responsible enough, to show the other side, or how the other side of that can be, with not just, not dealing appropriately with the trauma.
Right.
And how, how she turned that trauma into triumph. So yeah, it was, because I agonized about that, a little bit in writing that storyline.
Right. And I think, those kinds of things can be challenging, because quite honestly, even in Watercolor Whispers, there were some things that could probably be triggering, even though the timing was different. Yeah. There are things, let's just face it, as women, there are some things that it doesn't matter what generation or time you're in. There's certain things that we might have to deal with in the context of being in relationships with others, specifically, quote unquote, romantic type relationships. So there were things there as well. So, but I mean, that's real.
Yeah, I was nervous, and I have a wonderful editor. I just love her, Nicole Falls. And when she read the story, she said that I didn't want that to be Ella's experience. She said, but you handle it so beautifully. So when she told me that after she edited, I was like, phew, because I just want people to see the beauty of the story.
And you mentioned Hassan. Yes, I loved Hassan. Not just because he's a great, romantic character. He's a good guy, all these different things, and we're not going to tell you all of it. But we also get to see Black fatherhood. I will say that much.
Yes.
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 And so that was just really good to see. And it made me actually think of my dad, because there were times in my life that I was living with my dad and, thinking about the kind of father that he was and things like that. And so it's good to see that, because we don't often get to see, fatherhood in that way. A lot of times dad's like the sidekick or, whatever the case may be, but he's not necessarily always like a good central loving on the kids type of dad. So I love being able to see that with Hassan.
Same. Yes.
So of course, these are books, Graceful Watercolors and Watercolor Whispers. We get the tie-in because they're both artists. One of the other things that I really enjoyed about these stories is just learning more about the creative process and, being an artist. And of course, as writers, you are artists as well. So how fun was it for you to like dive a little deeper into maybe a different type of artistic skill? So
I don't know if it's fun. It's intimidating, because I want accuracy. That's really big to me, is accuracy, especially when you're writing historical fiction. Any fiction, fiction is fiction. It's fake, it's false. It's your artistic creativity. But with, both Twin and I try to ground our stories in not reality, but authenticity, and they're factual in some degrees, especially when dealing with history. But so we can't take all liberties. There still has to be some grounding. We do have freedom, artistic freedom, but there still needs to be some grounding where it's relatable and it comes across as authentic or genuine and believable. Believable as well. So like, for example, to answer your question in another way, also, it was refreshing, or it is refreshing, anytime I get to learn something new.
Right.
Anytime I get to learn something that's outside of my personal and private sphere. So both ladies being artists, I had to learn, or got to learn, not had to, I got to learn about, different mediums of art. If it's watercolors, if it's charcoal pencils, et cetera, just little things like that. They're not little, they are important. Learning different canvases, what type of paints were used back then. I had to do that kind of research. What kind of mediums were used? I also, in the historical aspect, I get to mention Black artists, that preceded Ella, and even Ella got to study under one of these famed Black artists. So that's always lovely to be able to go back in time and celebrate our forebears and those who came before us and help to open the doors for what we do. So that part is very lovely, and always one of my goals is to shine light on people who were kept in obscurity and kept in shadows and weren't allowed to. So that part is always refreshing to be, like I said, to go back and turn a light on. And maybe new for some, and maybe, I know that artist already. I've heard of that artist already. I have a painting or something by that artist already. But then for some of us, that person may be brand new, and it's a learning and opportunity for us. One thing I wanted to say earlier that came to me Again, the setting is 1949, so it's after the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes.
It's not the heyday of the Harlem Renaissance where art was wildly accepted and, was, this brand new. Ilona is benefiting from the aftermath of the Harlem Renaissance, but she's also not a part of it. So that is part of her struggle too, is that maybe art isn't valued in her community or household as it might have been back in the 30s and when that Harlem Renaissance was the heyday. Maybe she would have had a different experience, but she doesn't have that, so she has to make her own Renaissance.
I love that. Make your own Renaissance, even if you're not Beyonce. Okay. Yes, I love that. And it's true just to see that, because how can I put it? Whatever the skill set is not bound by time. And so you could be in a bunch of different, not genres. You can come out at different times of life, but if you have a certain skill set, that's your skill set, that's your gift, to the world. And, how do you express that gift based upon the time that you're in, in looking at like what's happening in Graceful Watercolors. What I noticed in that is, yes, it's still art, but art looks different in contemporary times than it did in 1949. And there are different ways that you can do your art. So for you, Pepper, what was that like, just diving into the art world as like someone who would be a contemporary artist?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to pick my great niece's brain because she actually is a photographer for the NBA.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. She interned with them while she was in college, actually. And then after she graduated, she got it. So actually, Ella's path took the path of my niece. So I was able to, use my great niece's experience so that I could make the character, more authentic. So that was, pretty cool learning, about photography and, the journey of an NBA photographer and all, that they have to do and everything like that. So she's actually no longer with the NBA, but she's a photographer with the New York Knicks.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's with the team now. So she does photography with the New York Knicks and whatever their hockey team is. Yeah. So I don't know the hockey team. I just know the New York Knicks. Yeah. So that was pretty cool to pick her brain about,
and
what
kudos
that life
to her.
looked like.
Yes, because just even hearing that is exciting to me to think that Black women who are out there being, photographers for the NBA and other sports teams. That's pretty powerful. And, anyone watching or listening to this could share it with someone, be like, hey, the field is wide open. There's so many opportunities. So like in the case of the books, what Ella would have been able to do versus what Ilana would have been able to do would be totally different. And then even, I may get the name wrong, but Ella's sister, she's an artisan as well. And she's like digital art or,
yes, she's a graphic artist.
So, graphic designer, graphic artist. So that's even a different way of expressing art, but it's still considered art. So I do love that, being able to see that. And y'all see art behind me though? That's my art. So I was like, girl, you need to get going again. It inspired me just reading about all that art and different ways that it shows up and different things that you can do with it and all of that. So I need to pull my brushes back out again and
yes, ma'am.
get going.
Yes.
So thank you for your books, because it definitely inspired me to do that. So of course, these are books 3 and 4 out of what's going to be 10 books total. So I just have to say, I probably said it the last time we had the conversation. Woo, that's a lot. Yeah. So what was it that made you ladies want to take this generation series and turn it into 10 books versus maybe 4 or 6 or another number? What was it that did you start out wanting to do 10, or is that something that kind of happened as you started fleshing the stories out?
Because we're crazy. Because we're crazy. We're gluttons for punishment. But Twin, I don't remember why 10, how we landed on that number. I don't know if it was based on the characters.
It was based on the 5 founding fathers.
5.
Gotcha. Okay.
4. There's 4 founding.
4. That's right. Yeah. 4, but one of them have the 2 sisters.
Yes.
Yeah. That's right. It's 4, but Yeah.
Okay. So backtrack just a little bit. There are 4 founding fathers of the town of Colemanville, 4 founding fathers of 4 little boys that Liberty saves, the enslaved woman that saves them, and they go on to build the town of Colemanville. So these stories are their descendants. So it's like their greats or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. So the stories come from the founding fathers of Colemanville. So you have the founding fathers, a patriarchal system, but we choose to focus on their female descendants.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The dolls. Tell us who the dolls are.
Yeah, Pepper.
The doll. No, you know, I don't remember that act.
Well, I mean, it's kind of.
I've been up since 5:20 this morning. The dolls is what is it, twins?
Daughters of Light and Legacy.
Daughters of Light and Legacy, right? Okay. Daughters of Light and Legacy. Mm-hmm. It's like a social group of women of the founding fathers who pretty much, I guess it would be like their almost little sorority type thing where they, do things in the community. They have different, what do you call those things, Twin? I can't think.
So the women's
auxiliaries. They have different auxiliaries. Mm-hmm. They do things like help people who, someone who may have just had a baby. They'll go and help the mother with the baby. They visit the sick and the shut-in. Make quilts for folks, things of that nature. It's community, community based. I was going to tell about the meeting in your book, Twin, but I can't. They're going to have to read it. In Twin's book, you'll actually witness one of the dolls' meetings. But yes, that's who the dolls are. Pretty, I would say kind of like what would be known to us today as like a sorority, except for it started with the women of the family members of of the founding fathers, but then eventually other women in the town were invited into the organization.
Yes. But I love that though, because so much, I forget there's some famous or well-known Black historical woman who made a comment like, there are founding fathers, but there's something to the fact about there being founding fathers, but there not being any founding mothers. So I love the fact that in this book, you're kind of turning it on its head. Yes, there were these founding fathers, which really they wouldn't have been doing what they were doing if it wasn't for liberty. So it really started with a woman.
Yes.
But, because it was boys, they're the quote unquote founding fathers, but it's really their daughters and the generations of women who are really helping to keep things alive in this community. Exactly. And just one other thing just popped in my head, just thinking about just the stories. And yes, it's the key characters. Yes, it's the community people. But another thing that comes up that I could appreciate is the fact that even when there were women in the books that may have had differing opinions, they how can I put it? They might not have always agreed, but it's like we listen and we don't judge. In other words, that sister we might judge at a certain point, but basically saying that woman, she might be doing something different than I do, but she can do what she wants to do. She can be the type of woman that she wants to be, that it's okay. And I was able to appreciate that, because how much do we sit and we get in our little clutches or a little whatever and judge another woman's choices. But women do have the right to choose how they're going to live their lives and things like that.
Right. And to that, I will say one word: pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Yes, yes. That's what I was talking about. Pumpkin. Y'all got to read it. Yeah. Y'all got to read it. And it's in Watercolor Whispers. You got to read about pumpkin.
Yes. Yes. And the dolls meeting. So you will actually get to witness
Yes.
The going ons at a dolls meeting.
At a dolls meeting. Absolutely. And just last thing I want to say also about Graceful Watercolors is, again, there was a sisterhood. Didn't necessarily show up in the meetings in that way, but just, the friends and ongoing friendships. And like you talked about earlier, reconciliation of friendships among women who may have fallen out for one reason or another at a certain point in time, and then they're able to come back together. So this is good, everyone. As it says, 2 different books in I should say books 3 and 4 in the series. I would say between the 2 is probably about 400 pages between the 2.
Yeah.
But, they're just really, really good stories. There is enough of a little bit of background information that's given. So even if you haven't read the first 2, you wouldn't be completely lost. But I would suggest that you read all of them just because they're good. Because they're good. They're good. So thank you so much, ladies. So we're almost at time, but I do have to ask because, of course, books 3 and 4 did come out in November, I believe it was.
Correct.
Yes.
In November. And of course, is there a timeline for books 5 and 6 that people can be on the lookout for? Are they still in the works or?
Yeah, still in the works. Unfortunately, we did plan to have them out this month in all transparency, but as Twin said earlier, life got to lifing. So, no excuses, but, we can all understand some things get delayed sometime, but ASAP. They'll be out as soon as possible, hopefully this year, but if not, stay tuned. They'll be out next year, but hopefully we'll have them out before books number 5 and 6 are next, of course, and we hope to have them out as soon as we can.
Yes. Well, in the meantime, though, both of you all this is a project that you all are working on in tandem. Are there any things that you're working on individually?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we both have individual. And that's a nice thing about this is like we still respect each other's space, so to speak. I honor that Twin has what she's doing on her own, and likewise she honors what I'm doing, and that's kind of part of the delay is something else that we both have to do. So yes.
All right. Well, we'll definitely be on the lookout for works from both of you all, the continuation of this series. And for those who have not read books 1 or any of them or 1 and 2 yet, please go back to 1 and 2 because personally, and I mean, I'm not just saying that just because I love y'all, but I just feel like there's such good stories, and each story, even though they're interconnected, they're also individualized. So just to really get a look at all these different women and their stories and, their families and dynamics within families and relationships and things like that is definitely a series worth reading. And as I said, about 200-ish pages for each one. I mean, you can knock it out on a rainy afternoon, and then on to the next. So I really do appreciate you all being here again. As I said at the top of the hour, I think that Suzette Harrison has probably been with me. I know she's been with me more than any other guest. So she is like my cousin now. We are family for sure.
We are family.
We are family for sure. I thought I had it here, but at one point you sent me this, some really beautiful things, a bookmark and all that I use all the time. So I appreciate both of you. Thank you, Suzette Harrison, for introducing me to your twin, Suzette Riddick.
Yes, my pleasure.
Yes, and I just look forward to more and more conversations with the two of you and individually as well. But so that is what I've got. So are there any places, last question, are there any places that you all might be going that people can meet you all talking about the books, or are y'all just like heads down right now?
For me, I'm in a cave head down right now, unfortunately, but hopefully I come out that cave next year and get to do some in-person things.
Yeah, same here. I'm in the cave.
Right. I do understand. I do understand. So thank you for allowing us in your life.
Yes.
During this time.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I'm gonna let you ladies grab some water, and I'm just gonna do an announcement about next week's book. But don't you all hang up. I'm just gonna let you all get a little break.
Okay.
All righty. And see you again real soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so that was such a thrill to talk to them again. Oh, I didn't tell y'all this, but I know you can still hear me. My mom was looking on social media. She said, "Oh, the twins are coming back." So she was excited that the twins were coming back because she enjoyed hearing you all the last time as well. So it's such a pleasure to have you all here again, and I look forward to all that's to come with your series as well as the things that you do individually. So in terms of next week, we have a historical fiction book next week. It's Let Us March On. Shara Moon will be here to talk about Let Us March On. And it is the untold story of Lizzie McDuffie, the White House maid who became FDR's unofficial secretary. So Shara Moon will be here with us next week to talk about Let Us March On. So I'm looking forward to that as well because, hey, it's Black History Month. Well, we celebrate Black history all the time here, but especially since it is Black History Month, I'm really excited to be able to tap into some of these unsung heroes and untold stories at this time. So to everyone who has joined either live or catches this in a replay, we appreciate you for being here. Thanks for being a part of the BGC Book Club. Please continue to share these conversations out. Buy these books, share these conversations, and we look forward. Yes, and actually, that's my soror. Talking about sisterhood. Yes, that's my soror. Black History 365. Absolutely. So yes, let us continue to share these stories, share these books, buy these books, support these authors, and we look forward to seeing you again here real soon. Take good care.